Hey everybody, we are back with another Teal Tinted Glasses. We are going to talk to the voice of the Barracuda, Nick Nollenberger, and see what is going on with the Barracuda this season. Stay tuned. But of course, if you want to be part of the show, make sure to follow us on all the social media. Hit us up in the comments. We will try to answer any questions we get as we move on. But let's get to this going here. It is myself. It is Mr. Kevin Lacy. It is Mr. Nick Nollenberger. How are you doing, guys?
Excellent. Thank you for having me, as always.
I love doing this. This is great. Nick, I guess
we wrangled you in this time here.
I know. I feel like I big league you guys on accident last time. I just had a brain fart and just totally forgot that we had it on the calendar. So
and you know what? I'm normally like really good about like being like, hey, we still good, and I was really busy, and yeah, it was something. Just for everyone, I have a new puppy, so if you hear puppy whining in the background, that is just going to be the normal thing going forward. Nick,
he stole a dog from Pucks and Paws, guys. Let's keep it real here.
Wow. I would be remiss if I did not ask how was calling the San Jose Sharks game in obviously Rusnowski going down to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. How was that experience?
Oh, it was amazing. Yeah, it was a dream come true for me. You cross your fingers, you get another opportunity like that. The long-term goal for me, obviously, is the NHL. So to get my first taste, I had done a couple of preseason games, but it's just a different animal, right? Just the vibe and, the process leading into the game and what goes into an NHL game. It's a more, I would say, more robust in terms of just the entire operation. It was a dream come true. I had an absolute blast working with a guy like, Drew Romano, who's such a pro. It's easy, right? You just kind of hand off to him and he runs with it. So had a great time. It was cool to fill Ruzy's shoes for a night. Obviously, huge shoes to fill, keep his seat warm. And now he's back at it, obviously, and I get back with the Cuda. But just for one night, it was a pretty special night for me personally. And I wish we would have had a better result, but that's just kind of how it goes sometimes. You can't control those things. I'm happy we got a goal. They hadn't scored. They didn't score the 2 nights prior, I guess it was, in Vegas. So, we asked for one goal. That was the only request, and we got that. So, I'll take it. But yeah, an absolute blast and a thrill.
That's awesome, dude. I was gonna ask you, like, when you're in that type of situation, I know you mentioned I think you did a couple of preseason games before. Yep. And so I feel like I have listened to you do some Sharks broadcasts, but this is obviously your first dance at the NHL in the regular season where it really matters here. And I wonder, did you have to like dial it back a little bit? Because I'm sure the adrenaline was going at, a million miles per hour here. And I know from my own public address announcing, sometimes if I'm getting really amped up, really excited and everything, it's like, okay, Kevin, don't talk like this. Don't talk like the Micro Machines guy. We got to slow it down and pull yourself back a little. You sounded like you were just right in the flow of things, but.
Well, I appreciate that. I did have a lot of nerves. I kept trying to think back. It's funny. I did a women's basketball game on Saturday for San Jose State, and I had not done a basketball game since college, so it had been almost 10 years. I had more nerves for that, and the only reason why is because I hadn't done it in so long. I tried to just have an approach with the Sharks game is I've called almost 500 professional hockey games. This is just another game, and that's the approach I tried to take. Hopefully it came off that way, and certainly there were nerves, but they were kind of excitement, butterflies, kind of surreal in many respects. Dreaming of that moment for a really long time. I've wanted to be a broadcaster since I was a little kid playing, floor hockey with my twin brother. And I was envisioning myself being Randy Hahn or Dan Rusnowski. So to be able to actually see it come to life was quite the thrill. And again, I just tried to, there was nerves for sure. I was excited, but I just tried to stay, within the moment and just, again, realize I've called a lot of hockey in my career and this is just another game. So approach it as such.
It's awesome.
You didn't call them the Elmira Jackals, so that was a start.
The Odessa Jackalopes. It was funny. I told my wife,
that was it.
I had one goal for the game, and that was to not mention the Barracuda. It's funny because I've been a essentially a Sharks fan my entire life, so Sharks is first nature. But now that I've been with the Barracuda calling games this is my 8th season, I've said the name San Jose Barracuda quite a few times, as you would imagine, and it becomes just like a repetitive thing. You're like a robot at times. So I just consciously tried to make sure that didn't come out, and thank goodness it didn't. And so for me, that was like a small win for me in the overall broadcast. I did not mention the San Jose Barracuda in reference to the Sharks.
I was gonna say, like, would it be more difficult? Like, would you find like you'd have a harder time with like a player that like had been down there more than, you know what I mean? Like, other than like a regular Shark, like a guy who's come up more, like a William Eklund, for example.
Just to kind of get them crossed and
yeah.
It's funny because, and Dan mentioned this to me at one point, Dan Rusnowski, and I thought it was a really good point. You know, our jobs are to remember names, but our jobs are also to forget names.
Right.
So from game to game, you have to basically forget what you just learned for the previous game. So number 8 for one team is not number 8 for the other team. So when you move from one to the next, so you do build this ability to almost kind of forget about players to a degree. And I felt that a little bit early in the game about some of the guys we've had in the last couple of years. William Eklund came to mind. I haven't called his name all year.
Right.
So it took a little bit of an adjustment, just that name, right? And just there's some cadence to it. There's just some repetitiveness and some memorization, all these different factors. So I found that kind of interesting. I was like, wait, this is a guy I called his name probably 1,000 times last year, but I haven't called his name this year because he's been in the NHL, and I just found myself internally kind of adjusting and pivoting on the fly. So there's all these little different nuances that go into it, and I guess you don't know until you're in the heat of battle, if you will, if things are going to pop up. So, yeah, you'd think Eklund would be a slam dunk, but I found myself, almost not overthinking it or having to think on the fly, but there was a slight, mental hurdle, if you will, that I had to just, get through as I was broadcasting. But for me, it's funny. It's like you do one period and you're pretty much, I feel like I know both teams. I feel comfortable with both teams, but you've got to get through that first period before it gets to that point.
Fair enough. So the Barracuda currently 3-5-3-0, good for 9 points, 8th in the Pacific Division. Probably not the start we were hoping for. Going in, what is, I want to start, let's start with a positive. What's gone right so far for this team?
Well, I like this team a lot, to be honest. I think this is a good group. I think it's a talented group. I think it should be a team that makes the postseason. You mentioned the record. The record is what it is, and there's there's no way to downplay the start the team has had. But they've had a lot of leads, as you guys are well aware. Mm-hmm. They've had multiple leads in the third period, multi-goal leads in which they squandered. You look back at that series against Henderson, where they just could not figure a way to win these games, yet they at multiple points in the games had leads. And really, I felt like outplayed the opposition in many points. So maybe it's a situation where you've got a lot of new faces and you're still figuring out how to win. Sometimes we just think, hey, you're more talented or you make the right plays at certain times in the game, you're just going to win games. But there's a skill, right, to finishing games too. And I think this team's still kind of figuring that out. It was good to get the win on Sunday, obviously, kind of a bounce back game. John McCarthy has said it multiple times. He's liked his team's game in spurts, but that's the problem. There's kind of a lack of consistency with the group so far in the early going, but there's a lot of things to be excited about. I think we've got a good blend of veteran players that they've brought in. The D Corps feels a little bit more experienced than maybe even what we had last year. And the goalie position has maybe been the most interesting area. As you guys saw today, McIniemi sent to the ECHL. And I think for him, reading, through the lines, I guess, if you will, it's a situation where a guy has not been healthy.
Yeah.
We're going to send him down and play some games while we keep these other goalies here to play in the AHL. So he'll probably be back soon, I would have, if I had to guess. But Romanov's been a pleasant surprise in my mind, and I'm just kind of waiting for Corona to get going. He had that really good game against Calgary, probably his best, and then is coming off his best win, or his first win rather, and his best performance on Sunday. So you're kind of waiting for him to get it going too. And all teams in hockey, at least, it seems like if your goalie's going, you're probably going as a team too. So it's been an interesting start, but I do like the team, and I think this group has a chance to be really competitive. It's just about doing it again on a consistent basis.
Yeah, I felt really bad for Magnus Krona because he was kind of struggling when he got called up. So, but obviously they had to call him up by necessity. And then he obviously has to go into that game where it's the I think it was the second of the 10 goal games. I felt really bad for him getting kind of put in there because I didn't think he had really kind of found his game in the AHL yet, and then to have to come up into the NHL and you haven't really found your game in the AHL, and to go into the NHL, which is a completely different animal, and have to go in that situation, I felt really bad for him. But I have liked his game more as the season's progressed. I think he's starting to kind of find his way a little bit. Georgi Romanov, that's a guy to me, like that you mentioned earlier, like pleasant surprise. Like I think me and Kevin were talking about this off air before he came on. Like that to me is the big story, because when he came on, I thought, okay, well, Mäkiniemi, obviously there's been health concerns there. But I thought if Mäkiniemi could get healthy by the time the season started, they seemed pretty high on Magnus Krona. And I was wondering if like Romanov was going to be the guy kind of playing the Strauss-Mann role this year. And so far, I mean, he's been the best of the two that have seen regular action.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. I mean, going into the year, I figured you're exactly right. I kind of figured he'd be the third goalie. He'd probably be the guy pinballing between the two leagues. Because he wasn't, to be honest, he wasn't great. I felt like in development camp.
No,
he stuck around. He stuck around for a couple of months, was in San Jose all the way leading into training camp and rookie camp. And you could tell he made some huge strides. I think he got more comfortable just with his surroundings. This is his first taste in North America. So culturally, there's a big shock there. So he got more comfortable just with everything. The language is coming along. I think he understands the language quite well. He just can't quite speak it at a consistent basis yet. But he understands a lot of things, which is helpful. And of course, Nabby working with him and being able to speak Russian to him helps too. But he made some huge strides, pretty incredible in those 2 months, what he was able to accomplish. And you look at just his size and athletic ability, there's a lot of physical tools there that get you excited about what he could become.
So on Mäkiniemi, is this like a continuation of the same injury, or is this like a re-injury? Do we know anything about Mäkiniemi in that regard?
I don't know real specifics. I don't think he's dealing with it. I don't think what he's dealing with currently is anything to do with the surgery that he had last spring. I think he's got something else going on. And I don't think, to my understanding, I mean, he's going to go to the ECHL and start playing. He's been practicing too. So I don't think what he's dealing with is really serious. But again, he's only played the one game. So, it's hard to really get into the brains of those decision makers and why that decision was made. But there's been a lot of goalies that have went to the ECHL and used that as a platform. It's always a little weird when a guy starts in the AHL, had success. The injury bug has certainly bit him. But even to play in the NHL last year and now be making his way down to the ECHL, and it's not really a performance-based thing because he hasn't played. So it's more of an injury-based thing. So maybe he can get down there, play some games, feel good about his game, feel confident about himself physically, and then he'll make his way back up, I would imagine. So kind of an interesting move. But as you think about it and you kind of, break it down, it does make some sense. Why don't you let the other two goalies who have been healthy, why don't you give them the net, allow them to continue to build their confidence, because they're both pretty raw at the AHL level. And Mäkiniemi goes down, gets games, kind of builds his confidence up physically as well.
And it also probably lights a little bit of a fire under Romanov and Krona, because here is Mäkiniemi in the ECHL right now. He's going to be coming back at some point. So it's time for them to take another step forward in their development. I thought Magnus Krona really played well in Sunday's game, because the Barracuda, those last two periods against Charlotte, spent a lot of time in their own zone. I thought defensively, I think the team played their best game, but Krona himself looked a lot more fundamentally sound. He was in control of both his body, his movement, and his rebound control was there. So steps forward in the right direction, and hopefully Krona and Romanov can continue that path with Mäkiniemi coming back. You always want the coach to have a really hard decision on who is going to be playing in goal. You want to have a three-headed monster And I don't think we thought that was going to be the case coming in, but hopefully Romanov can continue his success, because I think the numbers don't speak for themselves in his case. And Krona can build off of now 2 back-to-back consecutive strong starts. We'll see where he goes here coming into Friday and Saturday's games against Colorado.
Yeah, and 2, just to piggyback on that a little bit, for Mäkiniemi, you can never fault a guy for dealing with the injuries that he's dealt with. It's kind of too bad for him, because clearly the Sharks, when they acquired him in that Brent Burns trade, there was a lot of upside there. I mean, he was coming off an injury, but his start in the AHL was incredible with Chicago. So for him, it's about, stacking games, stacking a consistent period of time of being healthy. But as we all know, your greatest ability is your availability. And for Mäkiniemi, for him to get to where he wants to get.
Hey, everybody, we are back with another Teal Tinted glass.
He's got to be healthy, right? Whether it's in the NHL or in the ECHL. If you aren't healthy and you aren't contributing, then unfortunately there isn't a ton of value there. So hopefully for him, he can get healthy and kind of put these injury woes behind him. And maybe, I guess not maybe, but it will start for him in the ECHL, and hopefully he can have success and then make his way back up.
Look, for anyone who is not as common, or like the AHL is not their biggest investment, I guess, for those watching here, let me just throw this name out here. Logan Thompson. Logan Thompson went from an ECHL guy. He might have even been an ECHL tryout for all I know. He did not have a successful junior career. He started in the ECHL, then all of a sudden became a hotshot goalie for Henderson, and eventually last season he was an NHL All-Star. So the ECHL by far is not the end of the world, and Mäkiniemi will be back for anyone who's concerned and just not quite familiar with how the affiliation system works. So
yeah, for goalies too, more than any other position, going to the ECHL is not a death sentence by any means. You want to play, right? Development is all about playing, and again, you don't see guys necessarily start in the AHL for a couple of years and then take the path that he's taking, but he's dealt with a lot of injuries too. So I think it'll be good for him. I think it'll be, hopefully a step in the right direction to get him going, because there's a ton of ability there. Again, there's a reason why the Sharks made that investment and felt he was a value in that trade. Again, that sent Brent Burns to Carolina. So, I think the goalie position as a whole organizationally is in a better spot this year than it was at this time last year. So that's a good thing.
Yeah. Ian, may I take the next question?
Go.
All right. So, Nick, I've been wanting to ask you, we've been getting asked this question a lot by the fans. I know I have been around the Texas U Arena this season so far, but seeing a lot of the same trends in front of the goaltending, specifically with the defense group. The special teams has really, really struggled this season. I believe Ian's got the notes. They're 29th on the power play, 27th on the penalty kill. Penalty kill has really been noticeably rough in my eyes, and I think a lot of other people share that sentiment. Have you noticed any differences from last season to this season and how this team is constructed and how they're preparing for games? Because I'm noticing a lot of the same trends that I was concerned about last season, such as getting blown out the first game of a back-to-back, and then the second game having a much, much better effort. And then just taking too many penalties and executing not so great in the neutral zones. I'm just curious. Have you noticed any trends from last season? Anything that they are bucking and heading in the right direction on?
For me, it's funny when you call the game, you're looking in such a bubble. You're so focused on the puck and what's going on within a 5-yard radius around the puck. So, just from a schematic standpoint, I have heard that there's been some subtle changes. And anything that the Barracuda do is usually in reflection of what the Sharks are doing as well. And there's a lot of different personnel changes. There's going to be some adjustments. So I think one of the reasons why maybe special teams has been an issue to start the year, especially the penalty kill, because you're dead on. You know, the penalty kill has really struggled from the get-go, and that's a unit last year that got off to a great start and was kind of, I would say, something that the Barracuda could rly on. I think it was representative finishing that. I think it kind of, you know, tapered off as the season.
I think it was about the middle of the pack, but you're right. They were up there among the league's best there for a while. You know,
yeah, they had a great start. I think they killed off first 25 or so opposing power plays, something like that. So, you know, it's hard to really pinpoint why it has been the way it has. I just kind of go back to changes in personnel, you know, changes in systems and philosophies. You know, the coaching staff of the Sharks is pretty much the same with the Barracuda. So there is some consistency and you know, I guess consistency there for these players, but there's so many new players. You know, every year in the AHL, it's almost what feels like half the team is fresh faces. So there's going to be a learning curve, and we're still only in November. You know, as this continues, it's going to be concern if that is, you know, continues to be a problem. The Barracuda last year really struggled to stay out of the penalty box. At the time, they were really undisciplined. And this year, I don't know if, you know, looking at the numbers, I don't know if they've been, you know, worse off this year going to the box. I don't think they have. I don't think
they're as bad. Yeah, I don't think they've been as undisciplined.
Middle of the pack. But it's exacerbated when you can't kill off these
right, exactly.
That's what's been so glaring is the penalty kill is really has struggled. There's no question about it. You know, you lose guys like Ryan Carpenter, for example, who kills a lot of penalties in the NHL. You know, him going up, I think that's a factor.
Sure.
You know, the veterans like Pouliot last year, you know, a guy who's played a lot of hockey at the professional level. He's gone. Just different departures and arrivals, I think, is influencing and impacting special teams and, again, results, too, and being able to close out games.
Yeah, and I think the one problem is obviously with the Sharks having the struggles that they've had this season. I think it kind of magnifies the Barracuda because people are, like, looking at the Barracuda to be like, hey, this is the future. And then when they see, like, the record, they're like, oh, that's not good. Yeah, because I feel like the one place where I really like the Barracuda this year is the blue line. But I feel like they're still kind of having some defensive struggle. Do you think it's just like, again, just guys getting used to each other, different pairings? Because I feel like this is a really good blue line.
Yeah, I like the blue line too. Yeah, I think so for sure. You know, it's still pretty youthful. And you think of Cicek as being like a veteran guy, but he still hasn't played a ton of hockey. Mm-hmm. You know, he's up and down last year. I think that impacted his consistency when he was in the AHL was that yo-yoing. And there's an emotional toll that it takes for a player like that going to the NHL, coming back. I mean, he admitted that, I think, on multiple occasions, that's something that a young player has to really deal with and isn't always accounted for. Mukhamadullin, I feel like, has been really good, just offensively, the way he's so cerebral with the puck. But still, there's going to be some different things he's got to learn in his own defensive zone, being a little more physical in front of his net, you know, boxing guys out, all those little things. His defensive partner, Gavanke, is a good offensive player, but he's a guy, too, who's kind of rounding out his defensive game. There's these different factors, right? You know, if they were the perfect player, they'd probably be up in the NHL. So they're still kind of working on these different things that make you a successful player. But I think you're exactly right. A lot of different faces. Guys getting used to each other, guys trying to play the way the coaching staff wants them to. You know, if we check in a couple of months, maybe it's a different answer. But for now, I think you can still, you know, lay a little bit of just performances and inconsistencies, whether it's on the blue line or wherever, just on how, you know, we're still very early in the season. And there's a lot that needs to be, you know, shook out. The kinks are not quite out of this team yet.
I do think that Henry Thrun, his reassignment to the Barracuda has been very beneficial for him. I know when we do Teal Town After Dark after the Sharks games, one of the common themes I see in our chat is, when's Thrun coming back up? Why isn't Thrun here right now? You know, and all that. But I think Thrun has really developed nicely. I think for my money, I think he's been the steadiest defenseman the Barracuda have had since he was reassigned. And I think Radim Šimić has played pretty well as well. And Radim Šimić has also found, not like the fountain of youth, but because it is a different level than what he's been used to playing the last few years, he has been willing to take more risks jumping up into the play without putting himself putting his team at a different I can finish this sentence without putting his team at a disadvantage, because he has been very timely with his pinch ups and fallbacks and stuff. And I think Thrun and Shimmick have both really helped kind of stabilize this group to where you mentioned Muhammadulin and Gavanka being a pair right now. I think that's a great pair to have for both of them, because Muhammadulin, if Gavanka has an NHL career, that's the type of defenseman he's probably going to be paired with in the long run, and vice versa. Muhammadulin's probably going to be paired with a more offensive-minded defender like Gavanka. I was saying to Ian here the other night, I think him and Addison would be a pretty fun pair to watch. I do think pieces are sliding into place now with this team.
I think that's a great point. Shimmick's, he's come in with a great attitude. I think he's just grateful to be playing. The situation he dealt with really during his entire tenure with the Sharks has been tough. He's just dealt with one injury after the other. So the fact that he's healthy and playing, he's just happy to be there. And the first time we had him, which was 6 or so years ago, he had almost no English that he could speak. And now he's fluent in English, and his child was born in San Jose, and his wife's here, and he's really comfortable with the area and really happy-go-lucky guy. It's been cool to kind of, I knew him prior, but we just weren't able to communicate. So now we've been able to talk quite a bit, and he's just a really good guy. And again, he's just happy to be there and happy to be playing. It's not a situation where he's pouting that he's in the AHL. He's playing, he's healthy, and in the games he's played, I feel like he's really, he's been very solid. You can tell he's a guy pretty seasoned, and as he should be. He's 31 now. He's been around for a long time, but he's filled in really well and been a nice, steadying presence back there. But Thrun as well. Thrun's a younger player, but pretty poised, pretty mature kid. Harvard background, right? He played college hockey for a couple of years, so he knows what it takes to just be an adult and a professional. And I think it's been good for him. Fans want these guys to go up in the NHL, and I don't blame them, right? Where's the help? We need some help up here. But it's so valuable for these young guys to play in an environment where they're playing big minutes, maybe not dealing with the rigors and stresses of the NHL. It's not always the most pleasant experience when you're losing, right? Especially up there, because there's more reporters and more questions and more pressure. Why not let these young guys marinate and mature in the AHL, where they can continue to evolve their game, get used to the pro level? And I think that's what we saw with Bordeleau last year and Eklund. This year with Goosh, it took him a little bit to get that call up, despite being clearly our most offensive player. So it's not a bad thing for a little extra marinating for these young players.
You mentioned Bordeleau. Obviously, he just got reassigned not too long ago. He's played a couple. I thought he's played his best 2 games this season down with the Barracuda so far. How has he been since he's been returned to the Barracuda? What do you think he has to work on to get back to the NHL?
You guys see it when you watch him play. There's tons of skill there, right? And and that's what made him a second round draft pick and highly touted. Is he's got some unreal ability offensively. But to be in the NHL, you've got to do all the little things, whether it's in your own defensive zone or even being hard on pucks, being a little bit more assertive. He's never going to be a big, imposing physical player. That doesn't mean you can't kind of lean into guys and make it hard to play against. You look at, there's been a lot of successful undersized players, but there's little things that, you have to incorporate in your game. You have to have a buy-in, really, being willing to, get into those areas and being willing to take some punishment from time to time. It's not all on the perimeter. It's all about scoring goals. So I think he recognizes that. It takes a while sometimes for guys, though, to build that in their game, in my mind. And that's something he's going to have to learn if he wants to be an NHL player. But, offensively, the skills there. He told me when he came back, I said, what's your goal here when you're back in the AHL? And he said, I just want to get my swagger back. Nice. I thought that was an interesting point. Just wanting to get confidence back, because when you're in the NHL and you're, again, in an environment that there's not a lot of success right now and the team's struggling and you're not playing much and you're getting healthy scratch from time to time, or you're not playing many minutes. This is a kid who's been, the superstar on every team basically he's ever played for. So that's a tough mental hurdle for any player, and for him to come to the AHL plays a big role. Obviously confident in the league, knows his abilities translate at the AHL level. So I like the approach. I like the attitude. He's a great kid, and it's just about getting better. You got to look at the. It's hard for these guys, right, to look at a more macro approach, more long term, because they live and die each and every day on the results and the progress. But if you take a bigger look at your career and where you want to be, for him to be in the AHL at this point, it's not a bad thing, right? It's everybody wants to be in the NHL, but come to the AHL, have success, and try to continue to round out your game where, again, maybe the pressure and lights aren't so bright.
That's fair.
I think that's kind of interesting point that Bordeleau wants to get his swagger back, being technically, I think, a second-year pro still. I don't think that cup of coffee with the Sharks counts as a full season. I could be wrong. But anyway, I think that's a really interesting take, because that sounds like a player who understands his abilities and knows what he can do, even still being very young in his career, to identify his confidence as the big thing he wants to work on. That says to me, all right, here's a player who knows once he gets his confidence, he can go out there and light the world on fire. And that's, I think, what this organization needs more of, especially as Ian mentioned, the struggles in the NHL, the rough start for the Barracuda here this season, the team starting to come around. And I think overall, if you get a full unit who starts to believe themselves, watch out,
Yeah, I think one guy who's definitely we've noticed his absence so far, Tristan Robbins. Do we have any timeline on Tristan Robbins getting back into game shape?
No, and I don't. I mean, I've seen him. He's in good spirits. I don't think he's skating yet. So, I mean, I don't even know the specifics of the injury. I never asked stuff because you don't really want the information because I'm not going to.
Nick, anyway. We're going to ask you, and whether you can tell us or not, we're still going to ask you anyway.
Lower body injury, that's all I got for you.
I heard you say ankle.
I don't know what the timeline is for him. I think, he's obviously trying to get back. I would imagine he's back in the next, I don't want to put a timeline because I'd be completely guessing. But, hopefully he's back by December. I would, that would be the goal. I mean, he's not skating yet.
Power play needs him.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, for sure. And, you want for him, too, this is a big year. He's in his second season of his pro career. You want him to take that big step. It's been disappointing, and it's, again, not his fault.
No.
And been disappointing for nobody more than himself. But to, miss the start of the year and still be out, kind of a late game injury in preseason. It's kind of too bad.
Yeah, it's super unfortunate because, again, I think there's a guy who, and I think when you look at their early struggles too, I think Tristan Robbins, you could just tell that he wasn't there, especially when, before Bordeleau came back down. I think I like the forward group. I don't know if I love the forward group so far this year, but I like it. But Tristan Robbins is a huge hole, and
that has helped. That's what Bordeleau's reassignment has helped fill that void a bit, but obviously you want to have as many. You want to have as many weapons as possible. And now that Gushchin is up, just like you said, hope you come back soon here, Tristan. Happy birthday, sir.
Yeah,
happy birthday.
Do you think with the cause I kind of alluded to this earlier, but with the Sharks not having a great start to the season, we knew the season for the Sharks wasn't going to be good. We kind of knew what we were signing up for, and it's gotten better. Obviously, we're not talking about historically bad losses anymore, which is a nice change of pace. Do you think that puts more pressure on the Barracuda though? Because I think from what I do, for what we do with. We get a lot of questions about oh my God, should we be worried about the Barracuda at this point? Do you think that puts a lot of pressure on them specifically? Do you think that it puts pressure on the players when they start the same way, kind of?
I would say probably not, right? I mean, these young guys gotta control what's in front of them. And if you're in the AHL, you're not overly, concerned with. Now you're realizing what's going on in the NHL, but you're not overly concerned with what's happening unless you're with that group in that room contributing, right? But I asked John McCarthy this question the other day, and I think this was following. It was following the first loss, that first big loss against Vancouver, And I said, fans are going to look at the Sharks and they're going to see a loss like this. And what's the first thing they're going to do? They're going to go look at the prospect pool. They're going to go see who's with the Barracuda, who's playing well, who's in line to get called up and, be part of the solution and kind of, stop the bleeding here. And I asked him, so what do you want your team essentially? I forget exactly how I phrased the question, but essentially, what do you want your team to do, and how do you want them to play? And it's similar to what David Quinn has said with his team. He wants his team to just be tenacious. He wants them to be relentless. Build those habits in their game that just makes you hard to play against on a nightly basis. That doesn't mean running guys or fighting every night. That's not what he's referring to. It's being hard. It's making life miserable in certain areas. You go into the corners, that you're gonna have to battle and work to come out of there. So things like that, and I think that translates, and that goes back to a Bordelot trying to build those things in your game. You need skill. Obviously, you can't win games without scoring, and the Sharks are looking for as much skill as possible. But to be a successful team, especially when you get to the playoffs, you got to be a team who plays really, really hard and competes. And for the Sharks, those 2 wins, I saw it myself. I mean, the effort was certainly there. The way that they defended, the way that they just continue to work. They're going to be in these shootouts all year long because they give up a lot of shots and they don't have a lot of offense. But if they continue to work their tail off, they're going to maybe be in some of these games. And that's the same thing for the Barracuda. And for the Barracuda, they have a lot of talent, I think, in my mind, at least, some high-end players. But if you don't compete, you don't work, it's just hard to win, even at the AHL level. So that's kind of been the message from him to the team, and I think that translates to the NHL as well.
I think, usually the question I'd always want to ask is, who do you think is next man up? Now, obviously, Gushchin goes up, but that was, to me, the undisputed answer for a long time. Who do you think, now that Gushchin's up there, who do you think is chomping at the bit to get sent back to get a taste of the big club?
Well, the guy I keep just going back to, and I don't know what the plan is. I would assume that he's going to play most of the year in the AHL, but it would be Blueline for me, just the way that he skates, his offensive skill. I don't think he's really, really high in offensive. I think that can continue to evolve, but he's really comfortable with the puck. Really, it's almost casual at times and not in a bad way. He's not lazy or anything. It doesn't come off that way, but he's just a confident player. For him, though, he's got a big frame, but he's a little bit, I would say, slight in terms of there's still some physical development there. Yeah. So for him, it's good, I think, to be in the AHL. He was over in Russia last year, hasn't played much in North America, continued to get used to the size of the rink and the culture and everything. Because they look at him, obviously, as a big prospect, right? That was a big fish in that Timo Meier trade. They want to give him the best chance of success. So for me, he's been really impressive. Now, any young player is going to have his ups and downs, but he's been really intriguing. I think he's got an NHL future. There's no question about it. But for the time being, it's about just growing your body physically and getting better and better and just becoming a dominant player at the AHL level. So for me, that's kind of the guy I circle. That doesn't mean he'll be the next guy called up.
Yeah, I think a lot of defensemen right now.
Fords is on the short list right now to go back up at some point. Thron, who's played games in the NHL, is obviously an option. I wouldn't even be surprised. They brought up Lindblom the other day. So I think that makes you think maybe there's a chance for Šimik potentially to go up at some point, too, if you're looking for more of a veteran presence. So, there's lots of guys that can be an option. And as soon as you try to guess, they call somebody else up. So you just never know, right? So,
yeah, I was kind of surprised when they called up Lindblom. Not because I don't think he's been good. He's a player that just seems to have unfortunately fallen out of favor with the big club a little bit. But how's he responded to being in the AHL? We asked what everyone else said.
He has been great. I mean, just as a guy, he's an outstanding human being. Just extremely friendly, extremely kind, and has been a really good person in the room. And yeah, there's not a bad thing you could say about the guy. He's just been, he's just really positive. Has a real professional approach to him. Yeah, it's tough for him, right, because of what he dealt with his health. Yeah. I think that you can look back at that being a really big turning point in his career. The Sharks took a flyer on him a little bit last year, no pun intended, coming from the Flyers. But he just never, last year played a lot, but right, he never quite found the offensive numbers that he had prior to the cancer diagnosis. So I'm sure his approach and just the way he lives his life and looks at life is a little bit different. but he's coming in and been great. So he hasn't quite had the offense, though, even at the AHL level that you'd hope for. I think he's got just the one goal. So you'd hope that start to come a little bit, but as a human being, as someone in the room, he's been outstanding.
Yeah, I mean, as a human being, like I can't help but cheer for the guy. Like, just going through what he's gone through. Another name, just on we saw Gannon Larocque go to the Wichita Thunder. Is that a situation like McAniemi where it's just getting him back up to game speed, or do you think he might be down there for a little bit longer just with the number of defensemen on the Barracuda?
I believe it was put on transactions the other day, but he's back technically with the Barracuda. I think he's a little bit of an injury situation.
Yeah.
Nothing to do, as far as I know, with what he's dealt with prior. I think he got nicked up in the 1 or 2 games that he played down in Wichita. I think he took kind of a high hit. So,
oh no.
Yeah, he's technically back with the Barracuda, but yes, same situation. Young player, wanting him to get games. He's dealt with a litany of injuries, unfortunately, too. So, and there's a lot of promise there. He's a really, I think, intriguing player. It's just about getting him healthy and getting him, back on track to where he was.
He's a player I like a lot. I'm looking forward to
too.
Seeing him play. Kevin,
We've had a lot of chatter from folks here on our Discord channel, for example, about Gannon Larocque. It seems like a lot of Sharks fans are really excited for him, and so I'm not sure where he cracks in on the lineup right now, because as we already mentioned, Thrun, Shimmick, Muhammadulin, Gavanka, Cicek. I apologize to the 6th defenseman who I'm missing at the moment, but
can't summon it either, which makes me
that is a tough one to crack there. Valtteri Pulley.
Yeah, Valtteri Pulley.
Yeah. So
I was thinking too. I was like, Frisch, Pulley. I'm trying to think of the extra guys. Yeah.
Frisch is a +5 in only 3 games. I'd like Frisch to get healthy so he can get some more playing time there too. But a forward who's been just as excitedly spoken of by the Sharks fan base has been Ethan Cardwell, and he's a player that I've really noticed this season, Nick, as he's not the player who's like the most stand out when you're looking at the prospect pool. I mean, he did go back for an extra year last year of juniors, for example, but he goes out, he competes hard. You mentioned Coach McCarthy wants to reward the players who play exceptionally hard. And I think that Ethan Cardwell's work ethic might be second to none on this roster, because lately he has been getting the pivotal moments of, late game penalty kill or late game offense with the goalie pulled, whatever. He's out there and making an impact. And Jules, who's one of our colleagues here at Teal Town USA, was asking me the other day, what's his NHL trajectory? And I think because he wasn't quite on my radar in that respect, I said, I don't know. But if he continues to make the most of his opportunities, there's a role for a player like that in the NHL. Have you noticed anything like considerable about Cardwell's game that is, besides a great work ethic and always keeping his feet motoring, that McCarthy's giving him the extra opportunity? Yeah,
I mean, I've liked his game, and I think just speaking to the coaching staff, they've liked his game too for the most part. As a young player, you just never know quite what you're going to get, and I think that. You mentioned him going back for that overage year. Sometimes people look at that in kind of a negative way. Mm-hmm. But if a guy is going to go back, what do you want from him? You want him to dominate. And that's really what he did last year. Yeah. I don't know if he's ever going to be a really, really high-end offensive player, but that's okay. I mean, you're not going to have a team full of that always, but I think he's a reliable player. As you mentioned and you noticed, he does work his tail off. And he's got a little bit of an offensive nose for the net too. So maybe not a huge ceiling in terms of his offensive ability, but the floor for a young player is pretty decent. So I've been really intrigued by his game. And as a kid he's really mature for his age. I know he's kind of a media guy. He has his own podcast, so he's really
trying to work on him getting on our show here coming up.
Yeah, he's just it's been a good start. I know it's small sample size, but there were so many rookie forwards last year, and he's kind of the one this year, right? The one notable drafted player at the forward position, and I think he's been really impressive. So excited to kind of see where he can go if he can continue to ascend. But it's been a really good start for him.
Well, guys, I hope that his offense does continue because he has by far the best goal celebration on this team this year. He is so excited. As someone who gets very excited when they score goals, like I rarely do, and have to take advantage of that moment, I don't think I can compete with his celebrations.
Yep, on the other day, awesome. What was it? Saturday? No, excuse me. Friday?
Yeah, it was Saturday. He dug that puck out and scored, and fist pump, glass.
Lips. I love that too. I was like, that got me juiced a little bit.
Yeah.
I saw the replay. So yeah, good little celly. You know, the junior kids, you know, they're all about the celly. So sometimes they come in and they got a few, you know, tricks up their sleeve.
I really enjoyed Cardwell. Were you surprised that they just went with all alternate, no captain this year? And why do you think they probably did that?
He's going to name one eventually. Yeah, he did say he would eventually. So, you know, last year they named a captain, and I think he felt, you know, given the situation, it lasted 1 year, right? So he really wanted to do his due diligence. Not that it wasn't the right choice last year. I feel like it was, but he wanted to really take his time this year and make, you know, what he felt like was a drawn out choice that he felt confident with. So that was the thought behind that, and I think the plan still at some point to name a captain at some point. So we'll see if that happens, but that's what he told me and made public at the start of the year.
Is it a situation where, just because obviously we don't know who's going to get called up this year, so is a situation maybe where he's like, I don't want to name a captain then have him be gone, and then
I think that's part of it for sure. We saw that a few years ago. I feel like with Jacob Magna, who's a captain, and then ended up going up with the Sharks, and you know, all of a sudden you don't have a
never
captain.
Coming back.
It's really a balancing act in the AHL, as you guys are well aware. You know, to get a guy, if you're bringing in new players and veteran players every year, you know, it's hard to have that stability year in and year out with your captain. J-Mac was, now that we look back, kind of the exception. You know, wearing the C for a handful of years. So I think that was the thought. You know, there's some guys like a Cole Castles, for an example, who's, you know, a really good guy in the room, has been around for a while, is on an AHL contract. So unless he signs an NHL deal, you know he's going to be with your team. So maybe they look at that as kind of an intriguing decision or player as an option, a guy who doesn't necessarily have the flexibility to go up and down. So we'll see what they end up choosing, but I think that's definitely in the mind of J-Mac when he makes this decision, is who's going to be here, you know, who's the right fit, and is this somebody that maybe potentially is going to wear this C for a couple of years at the very least.
I'm going to slip in here because since you mentioned Cole Castles, I didn't know how else to bring this up. I'm going to take the opportunity right now. I think Cole Castles has had a really good presence on the roster so far this season. Obviously, he is a veteran player. He's been around for, I think, 6-7 years now, had a stint overseas, came back. But Cole Castles has been a player who I think that John McCarthy has really relied on in all situations. I think he's been really good at getting in shot blocking lanes on the penalty kill, and he's getting plenty of power play time with the team, especially with Tristan Robbins out. So I just wanted to throw out that Cole Castles, we're acknowledging you. Keep up what you're doing. My friends' little kids love you, so keep it up, Cole Castles. Now let me transition. Last show, everyone, I promised I was going to grill Nick about something.
Oh, God.
And here it goes. So, talking about Cole Castles and his veteran leadership. A veteran leader that the team brought in this season was Justin Bailey, a very speedy forward. Nick, last season when he was in Bakersfield, you sure made it a point that Justin Bailey had all the tools but just couldn't find the back of the net each time he'd get a breakaway on the Barracuda. I want to know,
how are you going to call
thoughts about
like
Justin Bailey
on our team? No,
yeah.
I mean, he does have a lot of skill, right? I mean, there's a reason why he was a high second-round draft pick. I hope Justin Bailey gets an opportunity this year with the Sharks, but you know how it goes when they're on the opposing team. You look at it through a different lens, and now he's a member of the Barracuda. We can turn it on him too, because there was a video that came out at one point where he said how much he hated the Barracuda. It was kind of an inside locker room video. So they gave him a little bit of a hard time, actually, when he signed. I think they showed him the video. It was put on Bakersfield social media. So not to flip it around, but you know how it goes. I look at everything with teal tinted glasses, as you guys know.
We
So
like to do, yeah.
So now that he's on the light side, if you will, we're happy to have him. He's actually been very, very good. I think he's been arguably the best player on the team in some facets, just his explosiveness and his frame and, his style of play. So, but with that speed, he does get a lot of breakaways. And I can remember last year had quite a few chances. So maybe that's what I was referring to. But I never try to, I don't care what team. I try to be positive. I try not to disparage anybody, but I'm sure I said that. So sorry, JB, my
bad. Well, Justin Bailey's leading the team in scoring with 5 goals. So I'm sure each time he scores a goal, he kind of looks at the press box like, I'm on you, Nollenberger.
I didn't say he was terrible.
No, you never.
He wasn't scoring on his
never said that.
3 or 4 breakaways a game. He wasn't scoring.
I picked that out because last summer, summer 2022, I was a guy on Twitter. See, I'm a guy on Twitter, folks. I was a guy on Twitter who was saying Justin Bailey would be a great leadership presence here on this team. He's fast. He's physical. He's got some size to him. And then he didn't signed with Bakersfield. And so each time Nick would point out a lot of positives, but it always felt like, and he's denied by McAniemi or whatever. And I'd be like, maybe Nick was onto something. But hey, he's scoring with us, and
very good. Yeah,
he's very good. Very good. I had to razz you about it. So,
well, that's all I got. Nick, as always, we super appreciate you coming on here and talking some Barracuda with us, and look forward to doing it down the road. Not too late. I hope we'll just make sure all the schedules line up. But again, super appreciate you coming on. Super happy for you that you got to do the NHL game in Ruzy's absence. So congratulations on that. Anything else, Kevin?
No, the only other thing, congratulations, Nick. I was so proud of you to get that call up, and I know that it's just a dream come true and well deserved, and you've paid your dues. So that's fantastic. I do also want to acknowledge Emily Garner, who just left the team to go, I believe, to the Iowa Wild. She was the presentation coordinator at TechCU Arena, specifically for the Barracuda. And I just wanted to, as my final thought, say, wish you well, Emily. I've discussed public address announcing with her in the past, and so we had a very good rapport. So she will be missed for sure from the organization. So.
Yes, we miss M, and I haven't done it yet. I got to reach out to Joey Goldstein. I feel like he went behind our back. He maybe plucked her. He's in Iowa too. So
we go. Yeah.
Better trading or something going on, but we miss M already, and obviously wish her nothing but the best. I know she wanted to get a little bit closer to family, so that was kind of the thought behind the move. So happy for her, and obviously we miss her already. It's tough when someone leaves, especially during the season, because you're like, wait a minute, where are you going on us? So, but we know how it goes. Family, obviously, very important.
Yep.
All right. Well, again, Nick, thanks again for doing this. And like I said, hopefully we could do this not too long down the road.
Sounds good, guys. Appreciate it, and thank you for the kind words. And we'll talk to you soon. Go Cuda.
Awesome. All right, and as always, in case you missed it, obviously you can get this podcast on YouTube. You can also get it on any of your favorite podcatchers. And as always, you can find everything we do on tealtownusa.com. We appreciate everyone being here, and we will see you on the next one. Have a good night.